Introduction of pallet instruction. The course will be divided in two parts. The first one, Introduction of pallet instruction. The second one, Application of pallet instruction. The lecture time will be around 10 minutes and there is two main goals. Able to use the pallet instruction in actual application and be familiar with the function of a system variable in a pallet application. Let's start. By clicking the pallet instruction, the setup page will be displayed. In this page, we could select the pallet type as 1 dimension, 2 dimension, and 3 dimension type. We could also set the count of the pallet in row and columns. Then we have the points to teach the path. On the right, we can also see the figure for the points order in path. You need to set the point, for example here in 2 dimension, from 1 to 4, following the points in other paths on the figure on the right. Pallet waypoint. User could add the waypoint for the pallet. Notice the order for waypoint teaching. The definition of waypoint is the end position for robot after arriving each pallet. How to use the waypoint? Add and click the pallet waypoint instruction. We can rename the waypoint, set up the speed, the acceleration. We could also select stop at this point or the arc transition motion. This instruction is only valid inside the pallet instruction. Notice that the pallet waypoint is relative to the robot pose at the first position pallet. To teach this waypoint, move the robot at the first position pallet, then adjust the height or pose. Usually, the robot pose remains the same. This example shows the robot end moving in a 3x3 square pallet with a pickup action. On the right side program, the program keeps looping from the pallet initial position 1. Including 2 waypoints movement, the robot will move up 50 mm and move down 50 mm when reaching each pallet. Edit the pallet instruction, select 2 dimension type, the count of row and columns are both 3. Then, teach the 4 points of the 4 positions of the pallet. Now let's have a look on the video of the pallet motion. First, we need to edit and teach the 4 positions of the pallet. Then we could set up the waypoints of the pallet. When teaching the waypoints, normally we'll need to move the robot to the first pallet position. Then we can run the program. We could see that the tool end is palletizing with a 3x3 pallet. Some more points about the pallet motion. 1. The pallet position and waypoints are Cartesian coordinates. Be careful to correct world and the tool coordinate while teaching. Second, the robot will move to the first point in case of starting the count exceeds the total count of the pallet. Third, the waypoint is usually above the pallet, with adding waypoint to let the robot move downward. 4. The pallet waypoint is relative to the robot pose at the first position. To teach this waypoint, the robot must be at the first position pallet. Then adjust the height or pose. Usually the robot pose remains the same. And fifth, waypoints could be replaced with a relative linear motion. Advanced example by using a system variable. To resume pallet instruction from the pallet position where the program stops, in case of simply stop command or collision, for example. At the right side program, we added a system variable for current pallet count. When the robot completes each pallet, add 1 to the system variable. Then, check if this variable is bigger than 9 or not, which is the total count of the pallet. Then, reset this variable to 1. In case of the program stop, the variable will retain and the robot will start from this current count for palletizing. As the system variable will retain after power off the program stop, it will add 1 after each pallet and reset to 1 when it exceeds the total count of the pallet. That is all for this course. Thank you for watching.